And, and that's something in terms of my personal values that's very important to me, that, to the extent that you can make that world bigger for other people and that they can take more risks and have the rewards. What a better gift to provide.
Welcome to Your Next Big Project is You, a podcast based around the theme of time. Time to be able to press pause on life. Time to reevaluate what's important. Time to reminisce about where you've come from, what you've learned, and what you've accomplished. Time to revisit your goals, dreams, and vision. And time to remember the people in your life. That's it, my friends. If you've got time, fasten your seatbelt and listen in as we discuss opportunities for the next 5 to 25 years of your life. And remember, your next big project is you.
Welcome to our podcast. Your next big project is you. What a treat for me today. It's rare to look at my Rolodex or go back 4 decades, but I have the pleasure to have, should I say, an old friend, a very good friend, a very valued friend, Kevin Corcoran, joining me today. Kevin, thanks for being a part of the podcast. Really great to hear your voice today.
Well, thrilled to be here, Leo. Always.
Yeah. When I think of you, I keep remembering back our feet in pools and different trips that we both earned many, many years ago in our Xerox learning skills days, Xerox learning systems days that eventually became known as Learning International while we were both there. We were supposed to be running the company, buddy. Back in our mid-late 20s, that was the dream. Tell me more and tell us more about the journey that's taken place from those mid-late 20s to where you are today.
I went to school, both undergraduate and graduate, in labor relations, because I wanted to be in the people side of business. And I graduated from Wisconsin in grad school and went to work for Miller Brewing Company, working for the VP of personnel. And after studying this for 6 years, I was like, my God, I got there and we were posted on a special assignment to go out to one of the breweries and try to improve the productivity of the people who were making a lot of money in these breweries. It was just outside of Syracuse. And we went back and we presented to the executive team this elaborate job sharing and how to motivate people and teaming and whatever. And the VP of marketing said, well, we can sell the beer if you can make it. And the VP of sales said, we're at allocation now. I don't care. Just, make more beer. And the head of operations said, he goes, these are fancy ideas from MBAs. And why don't we just fire more people and just, find new people? Because there's 10,000 people want to work for this company and this brand new brewery in upstate New York. And I went back and I was so disillusioned, but boy, did I learn an important thing. If you don't sell it or make it, you are just staff. And it was just an awareness of something that was so critical, because I had actually been selling all my life, but never looked at it that way, never looked at it as a career. One of my mentors at this company was former P&G. He said, if you're going to embrace the world of sales and marketing, you have got to get out of personnel and HR. So I went to work through his direction at Procter & Gamble and worked on the institutional side of P&G and learned, it's like another MBA in selling, the certain discipline that Procter brings to the sales and marketing process. And it was fascinating to be a part of that and then to be promoted a couple of times. And when you get promoted to P&G, everybody in the world comes after you, and I had people from Frito-Lay and from Soda Pops and everything else. And even though we were in the institutional division, when you get that type of professional growth, everybody wants you. And so I said, I really need to think hard about what I'm going to do with this, because it just seemed like an important journey or junction at that point. And I knew that I wasn't going to build a career selling soap and cleaning products to institutions and whatever. I knew that, but I knew that the P&G chip was going to be important. And that's when one of my other mentors said, there's this little company called Xerox Learning Systems, and nothing to do with copiers, but it's a sales and management training company. And I started the conversation with them before I was promoted to the West Coast with P&G, and that conversation continued. And 6 months later, I joined. And those of us who were there at that time, you included, it was a magical time in the 80s, and an interesting time to be with this company. At the time was the world's leading sales and management training company. And I always felt amazingly blessed that for 18 years, I couldn't wait to get up and go to work because we were talking with people, executive teams, heads of sales, heads of marketing, about how they move decisions, how people make decisions, how you can influence decisions, and provide the skills and the insights to other salespeople that can help them to be successful. And the whole perspective of human behavior and how people lead and how people make decisions, all of that to me was just so interesting and fascinating, both just in terms of what I did with my career, but also helping people to achieve that level of performance. And so for the 18 years we were there, I started as a sales rep. My last position was VP of Sales and Marketing. Just felt so blessed to be a part of something that was so motivating and exciting in terms of working with these companies. And I was in San Francisco and in Boston, eventually at headquarters in Stanford. And then the company had gone through a series of acquisitions. The parent company had purchased other training companies. They're in the process of merging these companies. And we looked at it as an opportunity to start our own thing. And so in 97, three of us spun off and started our own company. And we focused more on sales performance, bigger issues above sales training and sales skills. And it was just a fluke that our efforts to build a consulting business kind of aligned with the introduction of CRM technology, customer management software. And it was all the vogue at the end of the 90s, and everyone was moving to PeopleSoft and Siebel and Microsoft and others. And we started working with organizations who were preparing to bring in this technology. And we found that by helping the executive teams get aligned around how they go to market and making sure all parts of the organization was aligned in a certain direction, that when that alignment was achieved, it was easier to bring on this type of technology. And the adoption was much higher when you had really defined your sales and marketing processes and showed how the technology helped, not just play the role of big brother in the sales process. So we got the attention of a lot of different software companies. We were kind of agnostic. We didn't care who you used, but used us at the beginning. And got the attention of one company that really shared a lot of our business values, Onyx Software. And one thing led to another, and we were acquired in 2000. And part of that meant that I would leave Stamford, Connecticut, and head to the parent company to become chief marketing officer. And I had a 2-year contract, and I stayed for 3. And when it was done, and I was living in Seattle, I was ready for something else. And so I moved to Palm Springs, and then had this dilemma of, now what to do with the rest of my life. And we did well on the acquisition, so I had the flexibility to take some time and think about it. And there were kind of 4 mantras that came out of that. One was I wanted to figure out a way to travel for free with fun people. I had done a lot of work in hospitality, in hospital or in hotels, and did in the cruise business, and knew a lot of people in those businesses, and was fascinated again by how you create a unique experience, sometimes at levels of luxury for guests, whether they're in your hotel or on your ships. So I had a lot of discussion interest in that. That was one thing. I wanted to do something politically to support where I lived in Southern California. I wanted to join some boards and to kind of give back, and also see if I could also do some work that could be related to television or entertainment. So I was kind of surrounded by a lot of people in that. And that led to the development of Artful Travelers. Artful Travelers was built to kind of look at ways that organizations could use travel or travel experiences to develop a stronger relationship with their members or their guests. So working with cruise lines was one thing, looking at people who wanted to travel, but also we looked at and we helped organizations that tried to develop stronger connections with members like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. How could they add more value to medium and small business owners, and what could they do to make a stronger connection and build loyalty around their membership? We'd also done a lot of work in public broadcasting and had worked on a big project for PBS, building a program that would train development officers in stations to ask for money to raise money. And that got us deep into the understanding of public broadcasting and what was required to be successful in that business. And went to our eventual partner, Region 7 Seas, and said, how about if we create unique onboard experiences for your guests, using folks who are filmmakers, on-air personalities and others from PBS and NPR. So bringing talent from public broadcasting on board. And our partners at Region 7 Seas, they said yes. It took PBS a little bit longer to say yes. They didn't understand it at first, but it launched what became a 20-year partnership between us, NPR, PBS, and Region, where we bring really interesting folks from all different worlds of their professions, folks that are kind of the very top of their game, whether they're filmmakers or they're political analysts or they're reporters or filmmakers or writers, whatever, authors. And we create these unique experiences on board all over the world with Region. And 20 years later and 45 cruises later, much bigger than I ever expected. We're the highest rated cruises on Regent. And but most importantly, I have this Rolodex that has come out of this experience of people who, probably could afford some of these luxury cruises, but would never necessarily spend their own money. But they come on and speakers with us, and we all become good friends. And they have friends that have become speakers and prospects for us to feature, part of our edutainment commitment to Regent. And it's been a blast. And we've met the most interesting people, and we've been all over the world. And I think we've added a level of richness to this travel experience. And again, blessed to be working with partners like Region 7 Seas, a 6-star luxury cruise line. So, parallel to that, I also wanted to dabble more in sales consulting work. I was good at that and enjoyed that, and have worked with all sorts of organizations on, getting executive teams aligned around their sales and marketing goals, working with sales organizations on their processes and, some of their technology as well. And I've had a lot of fun continuing to work with sales and marketing teams. I love to not only do executive coaching, but to work with the teams that many of my executives are working with and help the teams to be more effective. So it's been kind of a portfolio of experiences and businesses, which is one of the things I decided I wanted to do when I moved to Palm Springs, like do a lot of things and be involved in a lot of different ways. And many times, some of them overlap. Some of the people I meet in business, are wonderful speakers on cruises. And I think it's always fun to be close to the sales game, to understand and to add value with all of that. So that's been the journey so far. And I do what I want to do. It's great.
I don't even know where to start to relive some of this. This is the same guy from Auburn, New York, right? That grew up in a biggest employer was probably the local prison, wasn't it, back then?
It was. My father was a prison guard.
Father was a prison guard, right? From there to Lemoyne College, was it, to Wisconsin, to, I'm thinking of, from Boston and Seattle and San Francisco and Palm Springs. And how many countries have you now been to as well through your travels?
It's funny. People ask me that a lot, and I've never really taken the time to do it, to really count the number of countries. But I can tell you that, but for Antarctica, which I'll probably do next year, we've been on every continent and every major city, certainly every major port. And, the gift of travel, really opens up your mind around what the world is really like. It does change your perspective when you have firsthand experience of visiting some places in different parts of the world. It's an amazing gift. And I always encourage people to, while you can and while you have your health and while you're able to move, that now is the time to do it. And I remember early on when we did consulting work, and my very first client was Royal Viking Line way back in the 80s in San Francisco, being invited to come on their ships and to experience what was defined by that company as luxury at the time. And just seeing people who were older, who were accomplished, who had the means and had successful careers, but didn't have their health. And I just remember it was such an imprint on me to say, you must do it now while you can. Obviously, we were all doing everything to maintain our health, but it was important. And so I look back on, I think my career number is close to about 135 cruises right now. That number I do know. And started again when I was consulting with these cruise lines early on and with these hotels. But I think the gift of travel and giving that perspective, that worldly perspective, is such a treasure, such a treasure.
Yeah, we talk about perspective, as you remember, in our program, in terms of even a greater appreciation that travel gives you in terms of some of the extraordinary places around the globe, the extraordinary people that have had an impact globally on societies and the contributions to people. Was there a trip in particular with 40 plus cruises that you've been on? Is there something when you think back, this is Leo, this one I went on, maybe top some of the other ones, or is in the top three? What that might be?
Well, there is one area of the world. People always say, "What's your favorite cruise? What's your favorite spot?" There's an area of the world that to me it was just fascinating and continues to be one of the most interesting ones. And I have a story connected to that. And that's the Middle East. Going to Israel for the first time and visiting the Middle East and going to Jordan and Egypt and everything around the Middle East. At the time, one of our favorite people from PBS was Gwen Eiffel. And Gwen, was in the New York Times, was at NBC, came to PBS, and she was in charge of Washington Week. And then she joined with Judy Woodruff as the first two female anchors for the PBS NewsHour. And we invited Gwen to come to one of our cruises. I think it was in Alaska. And at the time, she was like, "Oh, I'm very busy. I can't do this, maybe 3 days." She walked on and she's like, "Wait a minute. I think I could stick around for more than this." And she wound up doing 8 cruises with us before she died, unfortunately, a couple of years ago. But there was one cruise with her, which was so interesting. We were debating, like, where would she like to go next? And we had an opportunity to do one of our programs and an itinerary that included Israel. And I told her, I said, "You can't be the anchor of the NewsHour and not have seen this part of the world, because it's so much a part of news for 1,000 different reasons." And so she came with us on this, and she lectured throughout the voyage, and we had a great time with it. But, when you go and you visit the Middle East, and specifically when you go and see Israel, you can't help but be moved by what you experience. And of course, politically, it'd be all over the map in terms of how you feel about the government and how they treat the Palestinians and all that other stuff. But when you see it, it's the size of New Jersey. And yet in terms of influence and impact politically around the world, for lots of good and bad reasons, it's a fascinating place. I mean, I'm raised Catholic. Your catechism comes alive as you go through the Valley of Armageddon and you see this part of the world. But doing it with her was really special, because I think I've done it probably 7 or 8 times now. I've been to Israel, and it just challenges your thinking about politics, about religion, about world affairs, about the Holocaust, and in ways that really surprised me. And I often say to people, go there and have the experience. I know it'll change the way you think. One way or another, it'll change the way you think. And with Gwen, it was a wonderful opportunity to share with her. And, because she had this responsibility as an anchor and, west of it. And 3 weeks later, she calls me and she says she was invited to a salon, kind of a fancy dinner deal, at a gentleman's house who owned a lot of magazines based in Washington. And she was placed seating next to the Israeli ambassador to the United States. And, and be able to talk about these issues, having been there and seen it. She said, it was such a gift. It was such a gift. She never would have had the quality conversations that she had with him if she had not had that experience. And so, that's one example of the opportunity that travel proposes. I mean, when you go to Vietnam and you go to Saigon and you see everything that was there in terms of the war, it can't help but impact your feeling about that and that part of our history. And when you go to Rome and you go to the Vatican and you see it, and you just have these impressions that just make you think differently and hopefully think broader. And so that part of the world has been most interesting. Sharing with Gwen was really special, one of my favorite memories. But again, there have been so many opportunities to visit different parts of China, early into China before a lot of it changed. Fascinating to see how that's grown now. It's been a real gift.
Wow. When we had you as part of our recent program, the sabbatical experience, and we were talking with other very successful Kevin Corcorans about their journeys, as well as how they're seeing the next 5 to 25 years. We didn't talk about a Gwen type of person from a business contact that's had this attachment to your heart and soul from the time you spent with her and what you experienced from walking around the Middle East with her and things. You came from a big family, if I remembered right. And I remember we were talking about heroes. So on the personal side, you always were mentioning your sister, Pat. Tell us more about your family and about Pat and the influences she had on your life.
I'm the youngest of five in a big Irish family. And I was born very late in my parents' life. So my older sisters are 26 and I don't know, 18 years older than I am. And in upstate New York, our world was like this big, this big.
Yeah.
And, you know, going to Syracuse, which was 35 miles away, was like going to a big city. So we just didn't have the opportunities to see the world, coming from that kind of humble background. But my sister Pat, who's my second sister, I have two sisters, two brothers. When she graduated from college, she decided to go to the Peace Corps. And she joined the Peace Corps and she was placed in Turkey. And she taught English to Turkish kids and Turkish students. And then after 2 years, she returned to Rochester, New York, and she was hired in the city school district because 80 Turkish families were brought over from Turkey to work in Bond. Bond was the hat and the clothing company. It was headquartered in Rochester.
Yeah.
And they needed a teacher who could teach them. And so she did. And she set up the first English as a second language, ESL programs, in the school district in Rochester. And then at 31, she announces that she's going to Texas and she'd come home with a big surprise. And she went to Texas, single, 31 years old, comes back with this 8-year-old Mexican-American kid and adopted her. 6 months later, she adopted her brother. A year later, she went back and adopted 2 other kids that were not biologically connected. And at 32 or 33, she had 4 adopted kids as a single parent in Rochester, New York, and as a teacher. And she, I'll never forget, she just had this intensity around helping these kids. Most of them had some learning challenges. And she just had this intensity that she was going to be their teacher as well as their parent. And just remarkable, just remarkable. At 40 years old, she comes to a family picnic with some guy from Xerox who had never been married. She had never been married. They get married. She has 2 biological kids. And the kids have all done very, very well. But, I really credit her with just, showing us, she and my older sister who went to college when nobody in our family ever went to college, my sister Jean, the 2 of them really did lay the path of what was possible. Neither of my parents, finished high school. They were depression kids. They wound up getting their GEDs later. But 5 out of the 5 of us have degrees and have seen the world and had bigger experiences. And I think of these 2 women, my oldest sister going to college when everybody said that was a waste of money, and she became a teacher. And my second sister goes to college, and then she's in the Peace Corps and she adopts these kids. And, they really did, for me, create a picture of a bigger world, or at least the possibility of a bigger world. And the irony of ironies is that now, I have like 35 nieces and nephews. And, one of my important roles with them is to make sure that their world is bigger. For me, if I wanted to work in entertainment, the idea of going to New York for an internship or can't even imagine Los Angeles was almost like beyond possible. But with my nieces and nephews, the pay it forward piece is basically saying it's all possible. And, if you just need the direction, the funding, the coaching to make it happen, your world can be bigger. And I think that one of the things that we're all proud of, the siblings and I, are that, that next generation, they have had jobs all over the place. They've traveled the world. And a lot of that is just taking what my sister did, especially my sister Pat, and just making it possible and just showing all possible.
Wow.
And that's something in terms of my personal values that's very important to me, that, to the extent that you can make that world bigger for other people and that they can take more risks and have the rewards. What a better gift to provide.
Kevin, look, you went from here, buddy. I mean, I can't even extend my arms far enough to the world that you've now experienced and seen and the impact that you're having on people. One of the other things that stood out to me when you were in our program is you had mentioned about just your commitment to help a couple of universities and some of the members of specific parts of the school that you remember in terms of your time and talent and treasure. You direct some of it. to an area of the schools that you have fond remembrances of and that shaped who you are today as well. Tell us about that decision.
So when I was in Lemoyne, I was an RA, resident advisor, for 2 years. And I was really good at that. I mean, you look at it overall, the career thing in terms of coaching and that, I mean, the skill set to be a good resident advisor is very similar to sales or a sales coach, but I liked it. I liked it. I got a lot of positive reinforcement for helping and kind of guiding freshmen and sophomores. And when I was looking at graduate schools, I looked at law schools and I looked at business schools. And one of the criteria I had was wherever I wound up, I wanted to continue to work in residence halls and do that work as a dorm director. And I got into a variety of schools, and Wisconsin was one of those schools in Madison. And my former dean of students at Lemoyne said to me right after graduation, he goes, "Are you looking for a dorm job?" And I said, "Yeah, but I haven't heard." And I got into the schools and got some fellowship money, whatever, for the academic side, but hadn't heard about this. And so he said, "Well, a guy used to work with me at UVA has one job left. And if you want it at Wisconsin, you need to fly out there tomorrow and interview." So I did. And I wound up getting the job. And I had another amazing 2-year experience while I was in grad school, leading the undergrad experience in these dorms. And the second year I was there, we started this project called the University Seminar House. And it was basically this idea of trying to build a learning education environment beyond just housing. And they gave us one dorm we could work with, and we would invite speakers. If a rock group was in town, they would come and they would talk to the kids. And we went down to Chicago once. We went to Hello Dolly and hung out with Carol Channing after, stuff like that. The idea was just to extend the learning experience beyond just what happens in the classroom. And at the time, I had to hustle to try to get money to do this stuff. And the school provided some funding because it's like a pilot project. And so after I graduated and started having some success, I would write originally small checks and then larger checks, earmarked specifically to housing or student affairs. Oh, okay. And I did this at Lemoyne and also did it in Wisconsin. And now the seed that program planted in the late 70s, now I think there's 14, they call them learning communities in Wisconsin. And there's programs also at my undergrad, Lemoyne College, that have been supported by this as well. And it's funny because, most people will give to the business school or to whatever, major they were in, or just give to the general fund. But I've always earmarked whatever these funds are to housing and the housing or the student program. And, but now it's fun to see how that has grown. And I always encourage when friends of mine have kids or grandkids who are heading to schools, to college, to look for these programs, because especially to a school the size of Wisconsin, 44,000 kids, here's an opportunity for you to go in as freshman, sophomore. And the program that I started, it's called the Chadbourne Project, to have a very unique experience, kind of a small school experience with the resources of a large university. And it's just funny how, a seed of a little idea and some funding for a year has turned into this. And I think it's great. And I encourage kids and parents to look at these types of programs to really enrich their college experience overall.
Well, Kev, you mentioned in our program, we were having some fun thinking of epitaphs and things. And you said you would hope that yours would read as a wonderful journey shared by many. Where's the journey taking you? To end this today, what's the vision for Kevin Corcoran? And my gosh, you've impacted so many people, so many positive contributions. You've got such a lens, a perspective from all your travels, the places that you've been, the people that you've met, the influences from art and history and politics and food and wine and entertainment coming together. Where's the journey taking you, my friend? Let's end there.
Well, I think it's going to be interesting because I knew at some point I wanted to give back more to my local community. And so COVID, kind of the irony and maybe the gift from that whole experience was it allowed me to not travel for 2 years and really focus on some important things to me and my community. So I'm on the board of the Boys and Girls Club, which is a big deal here in Palm Springs. The Plaza Theater, which is an old theater, which we are raising money to renovate. It's going to become a great asset for the city. That's working well. I've had a chance to dabble in politics. I'm on the vice chair of the airport commission, which is a big deal in Palm Springs. So without, having the, I don't know if you'd call it the hassle of elective audience, being an elected official, I really have enjoyed, going deep into the community and doing and kind of leveraging some skills that are helpful to those organizations. So I'll continue to support that. Also, probably looking for other consulting opportunities that will go kind of extend an executive coaching practice that I have now. So I'm looking at that. And again, we're really, really good at creating unique life experiences through travel. And I have this Rolodex that I'm sitting on of people who really want to go out and to share their expertise with others. So one of the other things we're working on is building an ideas festival for Palm Springs. So what we usually do on cruise ships, we may do here, and similar to some famous ones in Aspen and other places, we're looking to start that in Palm Springs and make that be an annual or semi-annual event where we bring thought leaders from all over the world into Palm Springs and to share their expertise, very similar to what we do on the ships with Artful Travelers. So those are some of the things, some of the irons in the fire. And I think 23 is going to be an interesting year to define or really to put meat on the bones of some of those ideas.
Well, anybody connected to you better be in shape to be able to keep up with the pacing. If somebody said to me, describe Kevin Corcoran in a few words, even just based on this last half an hour, the things in the themes around excitement, of theme of venture, the issues around stewardship, the philanthropic interest that you have, the fun, but coming down to really making a difference in your life and the life of others. I have seen that front and center for a good period of time now, being privileged to have you as a member of our cohort to do this. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a very, very valued friend for 4 decades and growing now. I'm glad that we got back together through some opportunities, and just look forward to sharing some of the enthusiasm, the passion that you have with people listening into this. So thank you so much, Jeff, for being a part of this tonight.
Well, thank you, Leo. It's been a privilege to be working with you again, and I love the sabbatical experience, and I look forward to applying all that in 23 and beyond.
All right, buddy. Stay well.
All right. Be well.